VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. South Africa has 11 official languages. If you want to say hello, it's Sawubona in Zulu and Hallo in Afrikaans. Now, South African school children may start using Ni Hao to say hello. The country's education ministry hopes to add Mandarin language classes in some schools. Mandarin is the official spoken language of China. That country is a major trading power for South Africa. The two countries recently signed an agreement that identifies 5 areas of cooperation. They include curriculum development, mathematics and science, teacher training, and research and development in basic education. South African officials have not said how much the Mandarin language classes will cost. Troy Martens works for the Ministry of Basic Education. She says the new partnership is extremely valuable to both sides. The part of the plan that has gained the most attention is a proposal to offer Mandarin classes in schools. Last year, a public opinion survey showed that South Africans have mixed feelings about China. It found that 46% of South Africans do not like the spread of Chinese ideas and customs in their country. And 60% of South Africans said they dislike Chinese music, movies, and television. But Ms. Martens says trade with China is more important than those feelings. She says it is extremely helpful for South African students to learn about the Mandarin language and Chinese culture. And, she said, not every school will offer the language training. South African census officials have not said how many native Chinese speakers there are in the country. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Each year, about 250,000 Americans study in other countries. Some study abroad programs are trying harder to get students to learn about the local culture. One student, on his first morning in Beijing, was brought to a distant part of the city. He received money and instructions how to get back. It took some time, but he succeeded. Professor William Finley says challenges like this help students experience another culture. He heads the sociology department at the University of Georgia in the United States. He says, it's absolutely crucial that they know something about how people in other parts of the world live and think, and how they behave. Often, those students go in large groups, and they hang around with each other. We felt that they really weren't getting to know the local inhabitants. In 2008, Professor Finley started a program with South Africa's Stellenbosch University. The program combines traditional classroom learning with community involvement through a non-governmental organization. He says, we've been working with a particular NGO in the township, and they do 2 things. They run a number of these creches, which are basically daycare centers for children whose parents are working, and the library in the community where there are some computers. Our students typically work either with the little kids in the daycares or they work in the library and teach very basic computer skills to mostly young adults. Hillary Kinsey is studying international affairs. She spent 3 weeks in the Stellenbosch program. She says, "It was interesting to learn the history of the area and the recent development with democracy and that sort of thing, and then talk to these people and see what the social dynamics were, what the ethnic divisions were, how certain groups felt about other groups." When Ms. Kinsey returned from South Africa, she and other students in the program created a non-profit organization. We called it Ubuntu, which is a South African concept coined by Desmond Tutu, and it means "I am because we are." The idea is kind of based around relationships within society and what generates prosperity for the whole. And so we kind of took that notion and translated it into a larger international community. She says the goal is to help improve education and development in South Africa. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Many Syrians are trying to study overseas while a civil war continues in their country. Thousands of Syrian university students sought help when they learned there was money to help them continue their education. Leen Al-Zabak is with Jusur, an organization for Syrians living overseas. Jusur joined with the American-based Institute of International Education to create the Syria Consortium for Higher Education in Crisis. More than 40 universities in the United States and Europe agreed to provide emergency aid to Syrian students and professors. Each university decides which students to accept. Universities in the consortium are supporting 70 students right now. One member of the consortium is American University in Washington. It is supporting a Syrian graduate student and a faculty member in the university's School of International Service. Daniela Kayast is the vice president of the Institute of International Education. She expects there will be aid opportunities for 600 Syrian students during the next few months. She notes that a former president of Portugal, Jorge Sampaio, launched a scholarship program called the Global Platform for Syrian Students. He created the program because of Portugal's history of educating Jewish refugee children during World War II. The Institute of International Education also has a scholar rescue fund for university professors and researchers in any country in crisis. This year, the fund found places for 30 Syrian scholars in 5 countries. All of the scholarship programs may be found online at iie.org. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Almost 40 years have passed since Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong died and his Cultural Revolution ended. Changes in Chinese life caused widespread suffering during the Cultural Revolution. In recent times, some aging teachers and student leaders who lived through this period in Chinese history have been telling their stories. One of the first such stories published in China told of an apology from a student to a teacher. The apology gained attention in the West since appearing in China in 2010. The teacher was Chun Bi, now 90 years old and retired. She worked at the Beijing Foreign Language School during the Cultural Revolution. Today, Shen Xiaoke is a 60-year-old lawyer. He was a teenage student at Chun Bi's school in 1966. In August of that year, school was suspended. Political indoctrination was extreme. Mao incited people to denounce teachers, intellectuals, and others in important positions. Students influenced by his speeches turned against Chun Bi. Chun Bi recalls the period with horror. She says, "For us who were persecuted, it was a nightmare." Shen Xiaoke says he heard many students argue among themselves about who was the most revolutionary. People tried to prove they were revolutionaries by hurting other people. Chun Bi said if students did not strike others, they would be accused of opposing the Cultural Revolution. So people who were normally not aggressive would start hitting victims. 3 years ago, Shen Xiaoke decided to face the past. "We need to apologize to our teachers," he says. He wrote Chun Bi an apology letter. He expressed his regrets for himself and for others in his class. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
I'm Carolyn Persutti with the VOA Special English Education Report. The International Primary Curriculum is an idea that began in Britain 8 years ago. Today, this curriculum is taught in more than 1,000 primary schools in 58 countries, including the United States. Educator Martin Skelton co-wrote the International Primary Curriculum, or IPC. He says for children to learn and succeed, they need a program that permits them to learn individually. He says the idea with the curriculum is to help today's children become good citizens of the world and 21st century leaders. He says most of world problems are going to be solved internationally. No single country is going to solve the environment or terrorism. Mr. Skelton says the curriculum has activities built around the development of international mindedness, starting from the age of 5. The British American School of Los Angeles is one of a few American private schools that teach the International Primary Curriculum. Second grade teacher Allison Kerr says the main goal is to engage children in the learning process. This term, for example, her class is learning about people important in history. She says the children dressed like famous people. They had to research and bring 10 written clues, and the rest of the class had to guess who the people were. The British school in Boston held a fair for students, and parents called around the world in a day. Emma Northey, head of primary learning at the school, says 51 nationalities were represented. She described one activity designed to teach about similarities among different cultures. She says the children were each given a passport. They knew that they were going around the world in a day. We said to them, "You have to come back with 2 similarities that you had seen between the different cultures." Even the 3-year-olds came back to me saying, "Gosh, you know everybody writes. Some people write going down. Some people write from left to right. Some from right to left." Another educator, Kate Foy of the British School in Washington, says the teacher's role is to enable students to discover for themselves. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti. Tell us if you have experience with the International Primary Curriculum and what you think of it. Share your comments at voaspecialenglish.com or on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Kid Pan Alley is a non-profit organization that holds songwriting workshops for students across the United States. The organization recently visited a school in the Anacostia area of Washington. The children presented a concert with the help of songwriter and recording artist Paul Reisler. He established Kid Pan Alley in 1999. Since then, he has worked with more than 35,000 students and produced more than 2,200 songs. He says the power of music can teach children skills they might not learn in school. He believes the American educational system is focused too much on standardized tests designed to measure knowledge. But Paul Reisler says we now live in a creative economy. He says his group is trying to inspire children to be creative. At Orr Elementary School in Anacostia, 95% of students come from poor families. Marlon Ray is the school's dean of students. He says some of the children have difficult lives, but he says these kids still want to strive for greatness. Jonna Turner is director of programs at the school. She says the 4th and 5th grade students are often focused on more than school. Some have to help their families or live in homeless shelters. A shooting took place in April directly in front of the school. No one was injured, but the incident affected the whole community. Students are often influenced by what happens around them. Still, Orr Elementary School has a positive, hopeful atmosphere. Marlon Ray says the workshop and concert made possible by Kid Pan Alley created good memories that will last for years. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Car crashes are the top killer of American teenagers. Most of the crashes result from distracted driving, not paying attention to the road. Ryan Didone was a 15-year-old passenger in a car that hit a tree. He was one of the nation's more than 30,000 victims of traffic crashes in 2008. Nearly 4,000 deaths, about 12%, involved drivers age 15 to 20. Ryan's father, Thomas Didone, is a police captain in Montgomery County, Maryland. He said the driver of the car was inexperienced and was driving at night with a carload of kids. He was going too fast and caused one death and some serious tragedy for the rest of the community. Jim Jennings from the Allstate Insurance Company says the #1 cause of distracted driving accidents is the mobile phone. He says talking on the phone or reaching for it is like drinking 4 beers and driving. He said if you are texting while driving, you are 23 times more likely to get into an accident than somebody who is not. If you reach for a cell phone when it is ringing, you are 9 times more likely to get into an accident. Government and private groups are using public service announcements and events to bring more attention to the problem. For example, the insurance industry recently held a safety event near Washington for teen drivers. At first, 19-year-old Kevin Schumann easily avoided large inflatable dolls thrown in front of the car to represent children. He also avoided orange cones representing the edge of the road. Then, as part of the test, he started texting. He hit several cones and at least one doll. Debbie Pickford of Allstate Insurance says teens are especially at risk from distracted driving, and not just because they lack experience on the roads. She said teens do not really have fully developed brains until they are 25 years old. New legislation in Congress proposes to require all states to have a graduated driver licensing system. Graduated means teenagers start with restrictions on night driving and numbers of passengers. They could not get a full driver's license until age 18. Thomas Didone shares the story of his son's death to help educate teens and their families about distracted driving. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report. You can watch a video of this report at voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Students at some high schools in Illinois recently had some famous visitors. Among them were Jimmy Carter, the former American president, and Mikhail Gorbachev, the last president of the Soviet Union. Other speakers included former South African President F.W. de Klerk and Shireen Ebadi, the Iranian human rights activist. They were all in Chicago for an event in late April, the 12th World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates. The students prepared for the visits by working on a human rights curriculum called Speak Truth to Power. The materials come from the Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights. Manal Sala got to introduce Mikhail Gorbachev at her school, the Frederick von Steuben Metropolitan Science Center in Chicago. Manal is one of the top students graduating this year. She will be attending Northwestern University in Illinois on a scholarship for low-income students. Manal had not yet been born when Mr. Gorbachev became a Nobel laureate. He won the Peace Prize in 1990 for helping to end the Cold War and working for nuclear disarmament. Manal also got to introduce Mr. Gorbachev at the World Summit, where he joined the other laureates. She says students often hear about the Peace Prize winners and see them in documentaries. But having them appear in person, she says, makes them and what they did seem so much more real. Mr. Gorbachev said at the summit that he hopes more young people will work against global problems like poverty and unemployment. He said young people have to be given a chance to take a stand, to take a position in this world. At von Steuben, the former Soviet leader talked about his nuclear arms negotiations with President Ronald Reagan in the late 1980s. He also talked about growing up in a small Russian village and studying law at Moscow University. And he talked about the need for international cooperation, a theme of the World Summit. Students at Lincoln Park High School in Chicago heard from Muhammad Yunus. He won the 2006 Peace Prize for his work with microcredit for social and economic development. Mr. Yunus said he used his own money to make the first loan, about $27, to women selling baskets in a market in Bangladesh. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Education Report. In recent years, Bill Gates has given financial support to improve American education. In 2009, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation launched the Measures of Effective Teaching project. The project tests new ways to recognize what makes a good teacher. Its goal is to help educators and policymakers identify and support good teaching. The study is being carried out in public school systems in 7 American cities. Thousands of teachers volunteered to take part. They agreed to have their classes recorded on video, but only for observation by expert researchers. Last spring, The project collected digital videos of 13,000 lessons in the classrooms taught by the teachers. They were in grades 4 through 9. Researchers also collected information from students. They asked students to report their opinions of each teacher's classroom. Students were also tested in mathematics, English, and biology. Officials recently released early results of the project study. The report says teachers' past success in raising student scores on state tests is one of the strongest signs of their ability to do so again. This is known as a teacher's value added. The teachers with the highest value added scores on state tests also help students understand math or show reading ability. The results also say students know effective teaching when they experience it. The students gave comments on whether or not their teachers cared about them. They also gave opinions on how much teachers controlled or managed student behavior in the classroom. The report found that classrooms where students reported positive experiences were more likely to show greater learning gains. Another finding shows that combining different sources of information helps administrators provide better comments and suggestions to teachers. In many cases, administrators had been basing their comments on student test scores only. The Measures of Effective Teaching project continues through 2012, when final results will be released. Researchers plan to test a new measure that examines what a teacher knows about how to teach a subject. Experts say these findings could also help create better training and development for teachers. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. In February, students from 103 universities in 88 countries took part in an international computer programming contest. It was called the Battle of the Brains. The competition took place in Harbin, China. 3-person teams from each school had 5 hours to solve 11 real-world problems. Jerry Kane coached the team from Stanford University in Palo Alto, California. He says the problems involved, among other things, paperweights, robots, castles, and lakes. The students first listed the problems in order of difficulty. Then, they figured out the requirements of each. They designed ways to test their solutions. And they wrote the needed software systems. The winning team was from Shanghai Jiaodong University in China. But even that team was not able to solve all the problems within the given time limit. Stanford's team solved 5 problems and finished in 14th place. Stanford was one of 21 American universities that took part in the contest this year. The official name of the Battle of the Brains is the ACM International Collegiate Programming Contest. It began in 1970 at Texas A&M University. The contest quickly became popular in the United States and Canada. It developed and grew as more and more schools took part in local and area contests. The first final competition was held in 1977 at the Association for Computer Machinery Computer Science Conference. Today, a network of universities holds area competitions that send the winners to the World Finals, now organized by IBM. Contest spokesman Doug Heinzman says the world champions receive prizes and scholarships. They are also guaranteed an offer of employment or internship with IBM. He said past world champions are now working on some of the leading-edge materials in science and physics. One world finalist from China has been working on the Watson supercomputer. So this competition is a chance to be recognized and to work for some of the top technology and research companies around the world. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report. You can read all our reports and send comments to our newly redesigned website at voaspecialenglish.com.